I'm going to cut straight to the chase because, honestly, the memory of that night still makes my blood run cold. Even from the comfort of my own multi-million-dollar office. Picture this, it's Christmas Day, the air is thick with the smell of roasting turkey and fake holiday cheer, and I'm sitting at the head of the dinner table, a table that my money, not theirs, had recently replaced. My 5-year-old daughter, Lily, who is the absolute center of my universe, is playing quietly on the floor. Everything seems fine, the perfect holiday tableau, until my father, my own flesh and blood, pounds his fist on the mahogany table so hard the water glasses jump. He glares directly at me, his eyes full of a lifetime of judgment, and he shouts, loud enough for the neighbors to hear, "You are a disgrace. A single mother with no husband, living off handouts. Get out of this house and take your poor choices with you." The entire room went silent. My mother gasped, my siblings looked away, but I just looked at him, feeling absolutely nothing but a terrifying calm. I stood up, picked up Lily, and said very softly, "All right." I walked out the door and never looked back. But here's the thing, the kicker that absolutely no one in that room knew. The handouts he was accusing me of taking. They weren't handouts, they were the dividends from the $68 million tech company that I founded, ran, and funded all of their lives with. That whole sprawling, beautiful house, mine, their luxury cars, mine, their ridiculous monthly allowances. All from me. They were completely, utterly dependent on the woman they had just kicked out. Was I wrong for the quiet, devastating revenge I planned next? For walking away and pulling the plug on their entire pampered existence? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing. To understand the sheer poetic justice, or maybe the cruelty, of that moment, you have to go back to the beginning, back to how I, the black sheep, the so-called disappointment, became the sole financial pillar of my entire, deeply conservative family. My family, you see, operates on an outdated, almost Victorian set of principles. Success to them means a husband, a big house, a pristine social calendar, and a career that's respectable but never, God forbid, ambitious. I was always the rebellious one. While my sister, Clara, was marrying her college sweetheart and planning PTA meetings, I was in my dorm room coding. I dropped out of my prestigious, and in their minds perfectly acceptable liberal arts program to pursue a ridiculous idea, an A-driven logistics platform. My father, Robert, a man who saw himself as the patriarch, the self-made man, though his self-made status was a heavily leveraged small-town real estate firm, was furious. He refused to speak to me for 6 months. My mother, Eleanor, was all sighs and passive, aggressive pity, whispering to her friends that her daughter was going through a phase. But I knew what I was doing. I moved to a tiny, horrible apartment, lived on ramen, and poured every waking moment into my company, which I named Nexus Logistics. The next few years were a blur of all-nighters, rejections, and near bankruptcies. Then the breakthrough came. A major investment firm saw the potential, and within 2 years, Nexus exploded. We revolutionized supply chain management. By the time I was 28, the company was valued in the tens of millions. But my family, they still didn't get it. They thought I had some kind of high-level corporate job. They didn't understand stock options, valuation, or the fact that I was the CEO. They definitely didn't grasp that I was the sole founder with a controlling stake. My first major turning point and the beginning of my financial entanglement with them came when my father's real estate business hit a massive downturn. It was 2018. He was overleveraged, panicking, and facing foreclosure on the family home, the very house he would eventually kick me out of. He was too proud to ask for help directly. Instead, my mother called me, crying, telling me that Dad was having health issues from the stress, and that their entire life was about to be ruined. Despite all the years of feeling minimized and judged, they were still my family. I couldn't watch them lose everything. So I swooped in. I didn't just give them a loan. I created a complex corporate structure where Nexus bought the mortgage note, leased the house back to them for a nominal fee, and put Robert on a consulting retainer, a completely fake job to give him a monthly salary that was triple what he was making before. I told them all of this was done through my employer's philanthropic arm, to protect my father's fragile ego. He thought he was saving the day with a clever business deal. In reality, he was living in my house and drawing a paycheck from my company. This arrangement wasn't just for my parents. My brother, Ethan, a truly lovely but completely unambitious man, had a mountain of student debt and a minimum wage job. I secretly paid off his debt, bought him a modest condo, and set up a monthly trust fund for him and his wife, saying it was a small inheritance from a long-lost great-aunt, a lie they happily swallowed. My sister, Clara, the one who was doing everything right, was drowning in her suburban dream. Her husband, Mark, was cheating and draining their savings with a gambling addiction. She was miserable. I ended up buying her a new, beautiful home, putting it under a different corporate shell, and letting her live their rent, free with the same explanation about a distant benefactor. I even paid for Lily's private school tuition, and bought them all incredibly expensive cars under the guise of company fleet vehicles. I was the silent, invisible $68 million lifeline for my entire extended family. I provided everything, and in return I only asked for one thing: to be left alone and treated with basic respect. The biggest shift in my life, the event that sealed my status as the family pariah, was becoming a single mother. Lily's father was a wonderful, brilliant man, a colleague who tragically died in a car accident before Lily was born. I was devastated, but I resolved to be the best mother I could be. To my family, however, being an unwed mother was an unforgivable sin. It didn't matter that I was financially independent and more successful than all of them combined. What mattered was the optics. They obsessed over the missing wedding ring and the societal judgment. My father, in particular, was relentless. He constantly made snide remarks about my lifestyle, my lack of a proper male influence for Lily, and my inability to settle down. Every family gathering was an audition I was constantly failing. They loved Lily, but they were vicious about me. This Christmas dinner was the culmination of years of this toxic behavior. The previous week, I had made a major appearance on a globally recognized business news network, announcing a massive acquisition. My face, my company, and my story were all over the financial world. I was on the cover of a major magazine. I was, objectively, a colossal success story. But when I brought the magazine to show my mother, hoping for a moment of genuine pride, she simply flipped it over and said, "That's nice, dear, but did you remember to bring the good wine? And have you thought about meeting that nice young lawyer from church?" It was like a physical punch. My success was an inconvenience to their narrative. So, when we sat down for dinner, the tension was already at a breaking point. My brother, in law Mark, who was secretly borrowing money from my parents' money that was, ironically, mine, started to complain about his new car. The handling on this German thing is terrible. I really need to get something bigger, but I just can't afford it right now. He sighed, looking pointedly at me. He expected me to offer a solution. My father, clearly having had too much wine and feeling emboldened by the silent agreement of the room, decided this was his moment to lecture me. He started with the usual, "Look at you, Jessica, 30, 2 years old, and you're still so restless. Always traveling, always working. Poor Lily needs stability, a father. Look at Clara, she's doing it right. She has a family, a respectable life. You're just running around, it's disgraceful." My mother nodded sadly. My siblings stayed silent, letting the patriarch hold court. I tried to defend myself, calmly explaining that Lily was happy, well, adjusted, and that my work provided incredible opportunities, but he cut me off. Opportunities. You're a manager, Jessica. You work for a firm. You're lucky they give you the time off to raise your child. You rely on them. If you had made smarter choices, if you had married and settled down, you wouldn't have to struggle like this. The word handouts was used several times, referring to the generous bonuses he assumed my company paid me. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. I had bought them all a life of comfort. I was funding the very roof over their heads, and he was calling me a dependent beggar. That's when he lost it completely. He brought up Lily's father, saying something utterly vile about how I ruined a perfectly good man's reputation by not having a proper wedding, and that my lifestyle was disgraceful to the family name. That was the line. I felt a switch flip inside me. All the years of biting my tongue, all the silent funding, all the corporate maneuvering to protect their feelings and their pride dissolved. I put my fork down and I looked him dead in the eye. I didn't raise my voice. I was ice. Robert, I think you forget that I built a company from scratch. I employ hundreds of people. My net worth is more than you've seen in your entire life. He laughed, a deep, dismissive bark. Oh, here we go. The big executive, get real, Jessica. What do you think you are, a billionaire? You're a single mother taking a salary. Stop with the arrogance. That's when he slammed his fist and delivered the final, venomous decree. You are a disgrace. A single mother with no husband, living off handouts. Get out. Get out of this house and take your poor choices with you. Lily started to cry, startled by the noise. That's what cemented my decision. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the environment they were creating for my daughter. I stood up, went to Lily, and held her close. The entire family was looking at me, expecting me to beg, to apologize, to cry. They expected the disappointed daughter. Instead, I gave him the one word that would haunt them for the next 24 hours, all right. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just walked out the front door, leaving the entire house in a stunned silence. I drove away, Lily asleep in the back seat, and the glow of my childhood home shrinking in the rearview mirror. I drove directly to the 5-bedroom, fully furnished Malibu mansion I had recently purchased for cash, completely separate from Nexus, and which my family knew absolutely nothing about. The security gates whispered shut behind me, and I felt a freedom I hadn't known in years. So that's the situation I was in. The family I had literally kept afloat, the people whose comfortable lives were entirely dependent on my success and my silence, had just publicly humiliated me and kicked me out on Christmas Day for being the single mother who provided for them. I was out, and they were still in my house, eating my turkey, completely unaware that their entire financial world was a mirage I had created. And I had a decision to make. Do I let it go, keep the money flowing, and continue to be the invisible, abused ATM? Or do I teach them a very, very painful lesson about respect and consequence? Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have forgiven them and moved on? Or would you have pulled the financial plug and watched the dominoes fall? I'm genuinely curious what you would have chosen. The decision was, in reality, no decision at all. The line had been crossed. My self-respect, and more importantly, Lily's dignity, demanded a response. But it couldn't be a petty, emotional reaction. It had to be a surgical, corporate-level strike. I had to use their own arrogance and their blind dependence against them. The first thing I did, after making sure Lily was settled in her new, sun-drenched room in the Malibu house, was to call my chief legal counsel, a brilliant, discreet woman named Sarah. It was 10 p.m. on Christmas, but I knew she'd answer. Sarah, I need a complete freeze on all Nexus-related family, benefiting accounts and properties by 9 a.m. tomorrow. I mean everything. The Robert R. Smith Consulting retainer terminated effective immediately. The corporate lease on their home terminated with a 30-day eviction notice delivered tomorrow morning. The Great Aunt Trust funds for Ethan and Clara. The monthly payments cease. All Company cars currently in their possession. Retrieval notices issued. Do it quietly, legally, and without emotion. I want all personal allowance bank accounts linked to my funds completely empty and closed. I want the total, immediate cessation of all financial support. Sarah, who knew more about my family's dependency than anyone, simply said, "Understood, boss. Consider it done. We'll make sure it's ironclad." The corporate machine I had built, the machine that had sustained their lives, was now being turned against them. The next day, Boxing Day, was a masterpiece of controlled chaos. I woke up in my stunning new home, had coffee overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and waited. The eviction notice for the house, perfectly legal and notarized, was delivered at 9:00 a.m. The termination letters for my father's fake consultancy and the cessation of the trust funds went out digitally at the same time. The total silence from them lasted for maybe 3 hours. The first call came from my mother. It wasn't a call of apology. It was a screech of pure, unadulterated panic. "Jessica, what have you done? Your father's bank card just got declined at the gas station. His paycheck didn't come through. The bank is saying his account is completely empty." I listened to her hyperventilate for a full 30 seconds before responding. "Eleanor," I said, my voice calm and completely flat. "Robert was a consultant for my company, Nexus Logistics. His contract was terminated yesterday. He no longer has an income. The money he thought he was getting from his consulting was an allowance I gave him. That allowance is gone." She started screaming. "But the house, the lease, the lawyer just delivered a notice. He said we have 30 days to get out. What are you doing to us?" "The house," I explained, "was bought by a subsidiary of Nexus when your husband defaulted on the mortgage. I was letting you live there. Since you kicked me out, I have decided to sell the asset. It's a business decision." She was reduced to hysterical sobs, unable to grasp the cold, hard logic of the corporate world that I had mastered and they had always dismissed. I hung up. The next call was from Ethan, my brother. He wasn't panicked. He was confused and scared. "Jess, my condo association fee bounced, and the bank is saying the great Hant fund is closed. What's going on? Is there a problem with the estate?" This was the call that was hardest, but I still couldn't back down. "Ethan, there was no great Hant. That was money I gave you every month. I funded the condo and I set up the allowance. I've stopped the payments. I will give you 3 months of rent to find a new place, but the money stops now. You have to start paying your own way." The silence on his end was heavy. "But why, Jess? We're family." "You stood there silently yesterday, Ethan, and watched our father humiliate me and kick me out of the house I owned. You knew my success, but you let him call me a dependent and a disgrace. That silence was complicity. I'm done funding people who don't respect me." He hung up without another word. Clara, my sister, sent a series of furious, entitled texts. "You selfish B*H. Mark's car was just impounded. The company sent a tow truck. We need that, my kids. How could you do this? I am your sister. That money was for my family. You owe us." She truly believed I owed her a lifestyle. I responded with a single text. "I owe you nothing. Everything you have came from me. You chose your father's approval over my well-being. Enjoy your new reality." I then blocked her number. The climax of the whole affair was when my father, Robert, finally called. He was sputtering with rage. He had gone from confusion to fury when his consultant account, the fake job, didn't deposit funds, and then to absolute terror when he realized the house was being sold and he had no cash. He had, in his mind, been fired from a legitimate job. He had been relying on his fake salary to make his lease payments, which were only $500 a month to maintain his illusion of control. And now he had nothing. "Jessica, you stop this now. You put the money back. That's my pension. You'll ruin this family. I'll sue you. I'll take your company." That's when I dropped the final, devastating truth bomb. "You can't sue me for firing a consultant, Robert, and you can't take my company. It's not a company, it's the company. I am the founder, the CEO, and the majority shareholder of Nexus Logistics. The $68 million valuation you laughed at on the news, that's my company. The house you're in, it's legally mine. The cars, the allowances, Ethan's condo, Clara's rent, free living. It was all coming directly from me. You didn't just kick out your single daughter. You kicked out the woman who was paying for your entire life. You are all financially insolvent, Robert, and you have 30 days to find a new place to live. And if you try to make any trouble, I will make sure the public knows that the great patriarch of the Smith family had to be rescued from foreclosure by his disgraceful daughter and was drawing a fake paycheck for years. The phone went silent. He finally understood. The source of the money, the secret to their effortless lives, was the daughter they had just humiliated and ostracized. The man who prided himself on his self-made success realized he had been living on the charity of the child he scorned. The aftermath was exactly what I expected. There was no apology, just a desperate scramble. My mother called a few days later, trying to reason with me, appealing to my maternal side. But I was done. I told her I would pay for their move to a small rental apartment and would cover basic medical insurance for a year. But that was the absolute limit. Ethan called, genuinely contrite, and I told him to get a real job and that I'd help him write his resume, but no more money. Clara and Mark were furious, but their anger was toothless. They were forced to sell their expensive belongings to downsize. My father, he became a shell of a man. His reputation completely ruined among his small circle when the house sale went through, and he was seen moving into a tiny apartment. I haven't seen them since. I sold the old family house and donated a good portion of the profit to a single mother's scholarship fund. I live my life now in Malibu, running a multi-million-dollar company, and most importantly, raising my beautiful daughter, Lily, in a home where she is loved and respected. I realized that the money was never the issue. It was the power dynamic. They used my financial support as an excuse to maintain their superiority complex. By kicking me out, they gave me the permission I needed to finally take my life and my money back. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most liberating. I want to know what you think. Was my response too harsh, or did they finally get the wake-up call they deserved? Let me know, like this video, if you were on my side and think that sometimes a clean break is the only way to save yourself. Subscribe for more stories like this where the tables turn in the most unexpected ways. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.